Hi, this is Brad Keithley, Managing Director of Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Welcome to the weekly Top 3, the top 3 things on our mind here at Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets for the week of December 8th, 2025. The weekly Top 3 is a regular segment on The Michael Dukes Show. The show broadcasts on both Facebook Live and YouTube Live, as well as via streaming audio from the show's website, weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m. I join Michael weekly in the first hour of Tuesday's show from 6:10 to 7 a.m. for a discussion between the two of us about our 3 issues. We post the podcast of our discussion following the show on the Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, and Substack pages, also on the Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets website, as well as the project's page on national blog site, medium.com. You can find past episodes of the weekly Top 3 also at the same locations. Keep in mind that in addition to these podcasts, during the week, you can also follow and participate in the discussion with us of these and other issues affecting Alaska's fiscal and economic condition by following us on the Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets Facebook page and through our posts on Twitter. This week, our top 3 issues are these. First, we explain why neither the fair share nor the more development sides of the oil tax debate is addressing the issue in the way the Constitution does and the legislature should. Second, we discuss a recent op-ed by Larry Persily. He explains that he understands that we have a K-shaped economy, but what he doesn't seem to get is that he and others who advocate for PFD cuts are a big part of the reason. And third, after reviewing recent news reports, we explain why the Bishop for Governor campaign seems to lack any appreciation of the most important issue the state is facing. And now, let's join Michael.
Let's dive into the weekly top 3, Brad. This week, we're going to start off with the question, which we actually spent a good time on this, and I've been talking about this through years. What the Constitution says about our resource development. What does the Constitution actually say? And I will say again, when you hear the word maximum benefit, what do you hear versus what does a politician hear? And that's, I think, the big key here. Let's get started with the weekly top 3. And you've muted yourself.
At least I put the microphone back together. Yeah, I kicked it out.
Oh, good job. Okay, so anyway, what does the Constitution say, Brad?
So there was a discussion, a legislative forum up in Fairbanks, reported on by the Fairbanks Newsminer, that I think crystallized something for me that maybe I'd realized before and forgotten, and maybe this is the first time it's come to me, but it crystallized some thoughts for me about oil taxes and people's reactions to oil taxes that I think is important. The Constitution says maximum benefit. That's exactly right. What you quoted the Constitution as saying. But I think people hear that differently or articulate that to themselves differently, depending upon which side of the fence they're on. Some people, I think, see that and say maximum revenues. Maximum revenues in the sense that let's take everything from the oil companies we can, as long as the oil companies don't, shut everything down and leave. That is maximum benefit to us, to maximize those revenues. And I think that was the predicate on which ACES was based. I mean, you can see the effect of that. You can see the background of ACES, and then you can see the effect of that in terms of maximizing revenues to the state. The problem with that, the problem with ACES, the problem with maximizing revenues was the oil companies didn't pack up and leave the state, but they didn't bring any more money to the state. They didn't bring any more investment to the state. They didn't bring any more activity to the state. So what you had was a situation in which we were taking a big chunk of revenues as production continued, but production started to decline. And even though we were taking a big chunk of revenues, that production was declining, and we weren't getting the maximum benefit out of our resources because people had stopped developing.
Oh, we lost you, Brad. Your mic just crackled, and there you go. Sorry. It just clicked off again. I think you're kicking the cord. There you go. There we go.
I'll just stand here. Anyway, so I think people see maximum revenues, maximum benefit, interpret that as maximum revenues, and interpret, we can take a big chunk of that as long as the oil companies don't leave the state. Then we have the other side, and the other side, I think, looks at that language and they say maximum production. That what we're supposed to be doing is maximizing production of the state's resources, maximizing the development of the state's resources. And that's sort of what SB 21 was predicated on, but not really. SB 21 was predicated on trying to find the sweet spot between certainly where ACES had led us in terms of maximizing revenues, but at the expense of development, and sort of unfettered development. I mean, you could have zero taxes and you'd have a huge amount of production probably, because that cost would go away from the oil companies, and so they could continue to invest. But SB 21 was trying to find the sweet spot, I think, between maximizing production at all costs and where we'd been with ACES in terms of maximizing revenues. The problem is, I think SB 21, as it's gone on, and it's now 12 years old. It's about to be 14 years old. I think SB 21, as it's gone on, certain of the provisions in SB 21 that were intended to encourage development, intended to increase production, have sort of gone amok, and they have resulted in sort of going much more toward the side of let's have no taxes and maximize and focus on maximizing production. And I think SB 21, as it's evolved, has gone over into the maximize production sort of without regard to revenues camp. And you see that particularly, I mean, you see that in the 10-year forecast when you have production increasing by 40% and production taxes, which is a significant way we get revenue out of oil, production taxes going down by 40%. You see that in the 10-year revenue forecast. But you see it even more in the DOR studies done recently for Pica and Willow. You see that we're not, I mean, some people say that we're just deferring cash. We're going to have a cash flow problem for a while, but then that cash is going to show back up. It's not. I mean, what happens with the way the GVR, the gross value reduction provision, is working on Pica, for example, we don't see any production tax revenues out of Pica for 7 years, from 2025 to 2032. And we don't see full production tax revenues until much later than that, after most of the production from the initial Pica production is gone. And it doesn't come back. I mean, that production's gone, wasn't taxed at all. And so we are left without, it's not cash flow, it's just cash deficiency, because we never get cash out of that production. So I think what we've seen with SB 21 is just gone way over on the other side. It's gone to the sort of the maximized production. Those who read the constitutional provision saying maximize production without regard to revenues has sort of gone over the edge. What we ought to be searching for is what the Constitution says, maximum benefit. We ought to be searching for that sweet spot that I think SB 21 was initially intended to go after, which was continue to have development in the state, so you continue to have production out there, but you get a share of the benefits. Alaskans get a share of the benefits of that production. And that's how SB 21 was sold. It was sold as we're going to reduce taxes in order to increase incentives for investment. We're going to have increased investment that's going to lead to increased production, and we're going to get the benefits out of that increased production. We're going to get a share out of that increased production. It's not what's happened with SB 21. And so people, I think both sides are just not reading the constitutional provision. Those who talk about fair share, for example, are really talking about maximizing revenues. They're talking about the old ACES structure of maximizing revenues without regard to what happens to incentives for development. And I think those who talk about, SB 21 being great, we got to leave it in place. It's doing fine. We just have a little cash flow problem here in the meantime. They're talking about maximizing production sort of without regard to what it does in terms of revenues, in terms of what it delivers to Alaskans. And I think they're both missing the boat here. I think we ought to have the conversations about oil taxes ought to always focus on maximum benefit. And it's almost a mathematical question. It's almost a question of what tax structure allows continued development, but takes a proper share of that a share of that continued development for Alaskans, benefits Alaskans in terms of the revenue flow. And frankly, that's almost a mathematical formula. But we never discuss it that way. We always talk about, we got to maximize production, maximize development, and maximize production, sort of without regard to what happens in revenues. And that's what we've got now. Or we got to maximize revenues, sort of without regard to what happens to development and production. And that's what happened. That's what happened under ACES. I think they're both missing the point. And Alaska is the worse off because of that.
It was interesting, and I mean, we could spend a whole day talking specifically about the deficiencies in the oil taxation scheme, and I know that, the removal of the GVR in SB 21 would go a long way to that, and we can get into that. But I think it's interesting you brought up this article from the Newsminer, because I was watching some of the video of this last week, and then I was reading the article in the Newsminer about all the things that they're asking for, and, this just sounds like a bunch of kids with we need our stuff. We need our stuff. I don't care, and the legislators, basically to a man and a woman, were all saying the same thing. We're facing some serious fiscal challenges. And they're like, we've heard it before. We just want our stuff. Everything from full reimbursement on school bond debt reimbursement to defined benefits. They want more money for the schools. And a wish list of capital projects and everything else. I just don't think that these folks understand that hard times is coming. I think that the legislators are starting to see that and understand it, but the local municipalities, they've always gotten the sugar from Uncle Daddy. And now it's like, we can't do that anymore. Give me your thoughts on that before we go to break.
Well, no, I think you're right. We have a disconnect. I mean, so when Mindy O'Neill, the new mayor, was part of this, and Mindy O'Neill said, when confronted with the revenue question, Mindy said, "Well, we need to get our fair share of oil revenues. That's where the deficiency is." And it's like we're entitled to this stuff, and so we need to get it. We need to take it out of the oil companies without regard to what that does on incentives and without regard to what that does on production. And development, because we need the stuff. I mean, we think we need this stuff here in Fairbanks, and so you need to go tax the oil companies more to pay for that stuff. It's not. I mean, they're not. They're seeing the constitutional provision through their own particular set of eyes. I want more revenue, so the constitutional provision means maximize revenues. Or those on the conservative side see that provision saying, maximize development and production, jobs, and get a bunch of oil up there, sort of without regard to the revenues that flow to the state, and everybody's seeing it through their own eyes, and a lot of the people in the borough, you're right, in the Fairbanks borough, Anchorage, throughout the state, see it in terms of, I want my money, and
right.
And I've got stuff I want to spend it on, so give me more money.
Right. I want my $2. That's what they're looking for. That's the thing here. And it just shocks me to watch some of the commentary. I watched the interchange between Rob Myers and I don't know, remember who it was, Bobby Burgess or somebody. Anyway, whoever it was on the board, and they were talking about we just need more money. We just need more money. And again, the question is, where does it come from? There's only so much more blood in the stone, and it's empty pretty much at this point. This story in the Newsminer just lays it out. I mean, what was the thing? Assembly member Kristen Kelly was equally blunt after she was told that, hey, we're out of money. We need new revenues. She said, stating she'd heard the same argument for 20 years, including the decline in oil revenue. Well, yeah, it just has gotten worse over the last 20 years. It just sounds really stale. And, we all know revenue's down and dependence on it at the state level is a problematic. We need new revenues. Or maybe we should learn to live within our means and not look for the state to bail out the municipalities. That's part of the problem is you got municipalities living way beyond their means because they've been soaking it up off the state for the last 40 years. And maybe now they need to, pull themselves together.
Yeah, I mean, what we've done with the state support in Alaska, what we've done with the state support for the localities is sort of disconnect them from reality, right? They haven't had to raise their own funds. They haven't had to go to their constituents and say, we want to do this or we want to do that, and we need you to pay more to do that. I mean, in a lot of the other states, that's what happens. If you want something more at the locality, you have to go raise it from your constituents, and you have to go to explain to them why you're going to tax them more in order to raise the money. We don't have that in Alaska, and we don't have a lot of that in Alaska. And so you have people who say, I mean, a school board, it shows up most with school boards, right? Because the school boards are funded largely by the state. And so they're sort of just lobbyists, right? If you got a problem at the local level on a school board, oh, it's the state's fault. It's not my fault. I mean, I can't do anything about it. You got to raise more money from the state. And you start focusing, you try to focus all the anger on the state. And so they don't have any sense of reality because they don't have to confront it. They're not the ones who have to go to their constituents and explain it. They just, blame the state and try to get more from the state.
It is the penultimate example of what you say many times. Don't tax me, don't tax thee, tax the man behind the tree, right? It's always somebody else's money that we're using. It's not us. We want it, but we're definitely not willing to pay for it. I mean, if a community really wanted to have better schools in their community, they should be pushing back on the state on the federal cap on local contributions. I mean, because you've made that point many times that we're underfunding local schools from the local community contribution as compared to the national average by a good 15 or 20%.
Right.
I mean, if you really wanted to step it up, that's where you need to go. But nobody's willing to do that. They're happy to, because then Uncle Sugar's paying for it. I don't have to pay for it, right?
Or you have somebody else to blame. I mean, you have, we got problems. It's not my fault though. I'm trying hard. It's the state's problem. And, in the view of some, it's because they're not taxing the oil companies enough. And that's the real problem, not my problem.
Yeah.
And so you just have this escapism sort of.
It's opium. It's one hell of a drug. OPM, other people's money. It's one hell of a drug. That's where we're at. We're all addicts jonesing for the next hit from the state or the Fed or somebody who's not us. And I mean, I've been talking about this for 25. I'm exhausted. I'm tired of talking about this for 25 years. I mean, when are we gonna learn? But again, we got a whole new crew of people in there. I didn't recognize half the names on the assembly in Fairbanks because I'm not really paying attention to Fairbanks that much in that regard politically. And yet all of these guys are saying exactly the same thing that many others have said in the past, which is, oh, we should look to the state for this. They need to step up, and they. Whoa, wait a second. Why aren't you stepping up to do your own thing? It's kind of crazy. 30 seconds here, Brad.
Well, yeah. And then, the state says, well, we don't have the money. Oh, you need to tax the oil companies more and take more out of them. And that's, there are revisions we need to make in the tax code. We are not getting the maximum benefit. The state's not getting the maximum benefit, but it's not the be all and end all answer. It's not going to, pour zillions into the Fairbanks North Star borough to solve the problems they have there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if anything's going to change. Kim says, I see a complete crash and burn scenario with all the ignorance in Juneau. And maybe that's what it takes. We talked about this. An addict will only come to Jesus meeting when they hit the rock bottom. And maybe that's what we need. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. One of my favorite commentators, if you could hear the air quotes there, favorite commentators, Larry Persily. That guy, he writes a lot. And usually I disagree with most of what he writes. Brad's got a bone to pick with Persily because apparently he sees the effect of things, but never the cause. He's always got a plan, but it seems like the plan is always the same thing as the assemblies in the local, just more, right? It's just more. He sees the effect, but not the cause. Brad?
Well, so he wrote a column that I picked up in the Peninsula Clarion. It may show up in other publications in the state. The title of it was "The Country's Economy is Brewing Caf and Decaf," caffeined coffee and decaf coffee. And the article focuses on the K shape of the economy, the K economy. We've talked about it on the show before, where, you know, part of the economy is doing well and part of the economy is not doing well. You look at the averages and the economy seems to be rocking along sort of okay. But when you disaggregate it into the components of the economy, it forms this K shape with part going up and part going down. I did a column a couple of weeks ago in the Alaska landmine, where I sort of looked at that, and I had a couple of charts in there that I can use to demonstrate both use the other one first. Let's use the other one first. Demonstrate both what's going on in the economy and as well as what Larry Persily is overlooking. This chart is the change in mean real Alaska household income by income bracket from 2010 to 2023, and I use that period because that's the period for which data is available from the Census Bureau. And by real, I mean it is X inflation. We take inflation, the effect of inflation, the growth created by inflation, out of it, and show the real change, in economic terms, the real change over a period of time. And it's by income bracket, and the income brackets are different colors. We start in 2010, where everybody was in 2010 is sort of the base, and then the index is how much they rose from 2010 in terms of their real median income, or how much they dropped from 2010 in terms of real median income. And you can see that we have both. This is the K economy, because, you know, if you use the left-hand vertical axis as the straight line on the K, you can see the two components, the two legs of the K coming out, one going up and one going down. And you can also see the middle, the average or the median, sort of staying right at 100% through the entire time. Those going up are those having an increase in real income over the period, are those in the top 20%. To some degree, the upper middle 20% also have a slight increase. That's the green line that ends up a little bit above 100 by 2023. But we also have a drop. I mean, we also have the bottom of the K economy, and that's the lower 20%, and they end up the lowest 20%, and they end up somewhere around 92%, 90 on the index, 90 at 92 by 2023. They started at 100, but in terms of what's happened over the course of those 13 years, they've seen a decline in real income over that period of time. And that's what Persily's article is about. It's really about the K economy and the development of the K economy over the last decade plus. The situation in which some have done better than the average and some have done worse than the average, and we have this increase income divide in the country between the two. This isn't dollars. This is the percent of growth or decline from where they were in 2010, and things have gotten worse for those in the low 20%, and they've gotten better for those in the upper incomes. So Persily goes that far, and he says, "Oh, we got this K problem, and we've got this growing gap in the economy that's developed over the last 20 years." But then he doesn't address, what's causing that. At least in Alaska, he doesn't talk about that. And in fact, he's one of the advocates of what has driven this. We did another chart. Okay, flip to the other chart. We did another chart, and this is the effect of reversing the PFD cuts. If we had reversed the PFD cuts, if we hadn't made the PFD cuts since 2017, that we've had since calendar year 2016, fiscal year 2017. If we didn't make those PFD cuts, this is the effect of the change in real income that would have had. And as you can see, the blue line, which is the lowest 20%, would have had an increase in real income. And what's happened over this period of time is that the PFD would have gotten larger and larger and larger as the permanent fund earnings grew and grew and grew. And the low 20% as a share of their income would have had income growth along with everybody else through this period. There would have been no one by 2023. There would have been no one in Alaska who had an income decline. Everybody would have had a real income decline. Everybody would have had a real income increase. One of the biggest proponents for using PFD cuts as the revenue source is Persily. And so you've got it. You've got the understanding. He's got the understanding that we've gone into a K economy. We've gone into an economy where real incomes for a segment of the folks are in decline, while real incomes for a segment of the folks are advancing. And overall, it looks sort of like average. Overall, it sort of looks like everybody's doing okay, but that's masking the separation between the two. He's got that issue. He's got that problem. He understands that problem. But then he doesn't look for the solution to that and what's causing that. And you can see from this chart in particular, you can see that a real cause of that is the PFD cuts. Now, this chart probably overstates the effect of reversing the PFD cuts on low income and lower middle income families. The reason is not everybody in Alaska. This chart assumes that PFDs would have gone to everybody, every household in Alaska, and PFDs don't go to every household in Alaska. Out of the 750,000 people we've got in the state, only 640,000 receive PFDs because the others don't qualify. This assumes essentially that the PFDs would have gone to the full 750,000. So it probably overstates the effect, but directionally it's correct. Directionally, it shows that the distribution of the PFD, continued distribution of the PFD, would have moved everybody up.
Right. Rising tide floats all boats, kind of thing. Right.
As opposed to creating the K economy effect. So I give credit to Persily to frankly to finally signing on to the problem that we've got a K economy, that we're treating, that some income groups are doing better than other income groups, and some income groups are falling further and further behind, while some income groups are advancing far and far ahead. But he's got a big negative mark because he's not acknowledging that we are artificially creating that income gap through using PFD cuts, the most regressive tax ever. That we're using PFD cuts as a way of raising revenues in the state.
Well, Brad, this is a Juneau bubble problem, right? I mean, they all talk about the problem, but they all refuse to look at the reasoning behind why we ended up with the problem. And usually it has to do with their spending model or their lack of fiscal certainty or any kind of long-termness. I mean, that's part of the problem. They can all see it. Oh, we've got this, we've got that, but none of them tie it back to their actions from 12 months, 24 months, 60 months before. They just can't see that. They always, it's like, again, it's the crisis moment. It's the, running back and forth from one side of the ship to the other, kind of thing. It's that same thing. That's part of the problem. None of them see their actions as being what is causing it.
Yeah, and actually they see themselves as part of the solution in the sense that, we will direct money. We will direct money to childcare, for example. That'll, Julie Colomb, that will solve the issue. If we direct money to childcare, that will help support lower income Alaska families, and that will help solve the problem. Or we'll direct money in this way, or we'll direct money in that way. What they don't understand is that they're taking money out of people's pockets to do that, to redirect the money. And in taking money out of people's pockets, they're making people poorer. and in particular, they're making the lower half of the income brackets poorer. And so they think they're doing good things because they're redirecting. Well, they tell themselves they're doing good things because they're redirecting this money. And, oh, that's supposed to help it. If we just do childcare, if we just do this, or if we just do that, that will help. That will help the situation. If we spend more, so we have more government employees. If we spend more on schools, so we have, construction jobs out in the bush, or we have more teachers out in the bush, that'll make it better. But they're making it worse. They're by taking money out of people's pockets, they're making it worse. They're making that K-shape economy when it doesn't need to be.
Quick question before we run out of time here. Do you think he's gonna see this? Do you think he's gonna hear what you're saying and realize, oh, I've been calling for the wrong thing this whole time? I mean, is anybody gonna notice that there is a cause to this effect?
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think Larry's so far down the road in terms of the government will solve the problem by taking your money and redirecting it in a better way. I think he's so far down that road that he's not going to back up and say, wait, where's this money coming from? and what are we doing to the people that we're taking it out of their pockets? I don't think he'll back up and do that. But legislators, when they go down to Juneau, they should keep a focus on the fact that we've developed that we have artificially in Alaska. We've artificially developed this K-shaped economy by taking money out of the pockets of the very people that can afford it least. That we're pushing them farther and farther down the income brackets by taking that money out of their pockets.
Well, and unfortunately, reversing it would take power away from the same people that caused the problem in the first place, and they're never going to relinquish that kind of control. That's my problem here, Brad, is that you're making a very valid point. This is the same point that we've been making for years, and yet who's hearing it? The handful of people, the few thousand people that may be affected by this show in the state of Alaska, but definitely the powers that be aren't hearing it. I mean, again, you look at some of the commentary from some of these legislators at this joint work session in Fairbanks or at the press conference that they had last year. Lyman Hoffman, oh my God, we've just discovered we're in a crisis. Wait a second. Where have you been? I mean, and then you cry about it, and yet you don't see that the things that you are doing is, like you said, they see themselves as the saviors. They're going to fix it. You created it. How are you going to fix it if you won't even acknowledge that you created it?
Yeah, there's a lot of things to say about that, Michael. We have virtually no revenue experts in the legislature. We have 60. If you count the staff, we have 180 spending experts. They all know where to spend it. They all know how to respond to constituents' push for spending. But we have virtually no revenue experts, people who understand the impact of taking revenue in certain ways, and the exacerbating effect on the K economy that taking it through PFD cuts have. We have virtually no one who truly is trying to think through how do we support Alaskans best from a revenue side. If we need revenue, what's the best way to do it? What's the economically most efficient way to do it to help support the Alaska economy and Alaska households and Alaska families? We have no one who's really thinking through that. So when you get down to Juneau, everybody is, I got to spend more. I mean, they elected me to come down here and spend. That's what I get to do. I get to appropriate. And so you got 60 people down there who go, I know how to spend. We ought to spend more on this. We ought to spend more on that. And compromise to them is spending on both. Maybe a little bit less than what they wanted. They compromised, right? They reduced their ask down a little bit, but they spend on both because that's what you're supposed to do as a legislator. And we got no one sitting down there going, wait, how we raise this revenue actually has a bigger impact on households than how we spend it, because spending it through childcare or through increased Medicaid, how you spend it impacts a few people in the group, but it doesn't impact everybody. If you take it as a revenue, if you take it from revenue and take it through PFD cuts, you're impacting every Alaska household out there. And we're not, and we don't really have anybody who sits down there and goes, from a revenue standpoint, it'd be better if we did it this way. I mean, there's a lot of problems down there, but that's one of them.
Yeah. Well, it's problematic. I mean, I think Brian sums it up. We've got $80 billion in the bank and we're still broke. And that's kind of, I mean, that's the same thing Joe Geldhoff said on the program yesterday with Donna Ardwin, was that, structurally the state's bankrupt. I mean, we got all this money in the bank, but we, structurally we just keep spending ourselves into oblivion. And that's why there's this desperation right now, of course, to combine the funds, because that's the last gasp. That's the final pot of money that's available for them to really draw from with any deep, meaningful way. And so that's why there's this desperation to combine those funds so they can bypass the constitutional protections, because then they can just keep going until they retire, and then it's somebody else's problem.
Yeah, certainly is. I mean, it's just the latest. It's the next step in the, let's drain the SBR because things will get better. Let's drain the CBR because things will get better. Let's drain the PFDs because things will get better. And now it's, oh shit, we've gone through all of those, and now we're out of options. Oh well, wait, we can tap into the back end we can tap into the corpus of the permanent fund, even if the permanent fund corporation isn't producing earnings sufficient to pay for the draws. We can tap into the back end of the permanent fund if we can just consolidate these two accounts together, and we can keep the party going for a few more years. And it's just it is. I mean, it's a continuation of that, and it's a continuation of that. The way to raise revenue is to raise it in a way that no one has to pay it.
Yeah.
Other than middle and lower income Alaska families through PFD cuts, but
who don't have a voice, who really don't have much of a voice in the donor class or anything else. That's what it is. All right, you've also got your one explicative out of the way for the day. So I
did. It was in the middle. But you noticed
you did. Okay. I know you. As long as you did this on purpose, I'm all okay. Because I know we get all wrapped up about it, and I just don't want to do it. But it is an oh shit moment. I mean, there's no two ways about it. That's exactly like and now you can see the look on legislators' faces when they're realizing, man, we might have we've got a problem. But about. Yeah.
But even now they continue spending. I mean, the problem to them is we're not spending it in the right way.
Yeah.
The problem to them is we got to figure out better ways to spend it, as opposed to, wait, there is no revenue. You got to look at more efficient ways to raise the revenue.
Brad was just saying something during the break that I thought was hysterical. It's like they don't get it. They just don't get it in the end. It's like, we just didn't spend the money correctly, right? That was the answer, Brad, is that, we just didn't spend it right, but now we're going to spend it right. It's like communism has never worked because communism has never been done just correctly. I mean, we've got dozens of examples of it failing miserably, but it's only failed because it hasn't been done right. And that's where we're at with the state budget, right? We're only spent. I'm going to spend it correctly. All the other guys ahead of me, the 5 years that I did before this, I just was doing it wrong. Now I'm going to do it right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, people get, elected, or they get hearing spots down before the legislature when they talk about, oh, we need to spend it in this direction. Child care is my latest example, but it's a big example. We just need to spend it here, and everything will be better. Or we need to we need to do schools better. We need to spend more on schools in this way, and everything will be better. All the while taking the revenues out of the very people who are being hurt most.
Yeah, don't worry. Defined benefits. We'll do it right this time. Right. Okay. They'll see that. All right. Number 3. Sorry. Got a little sidetracked there. Number 3. There's no there. Click Bishop on parade. What give me the rundown here.
Well, I was doing my review of papers, and there was an article in the Ketchikan Daily News, which actually has some really good news and some good editorial pieces sometimes. And there was Click had made an appearance down in Ketchikan, and this article captures what Click was saying down there. And it says, there's a piece of it that says, looking at what Bishop would hope to accomplish as governor, he has 4 top planks. All right. We've spent most of this program talking about fiscal issues, right? That the core problem is we don't have any money, and we're raising the money we do have wrong.
Right.
We're raising it in a way that exacerbates the K economy, as opposed to, tries to be supportive of all Alaska households. We're trying to spend too much, and we don't have enough money. That's the core issue facing the state. That's the issue that everything else spends off on. So Click has 4 top planks. None of them relate to fiscal policy. Here's the first: is cheap energy. We need, when he says cheap, the candidate says that he is thinking reliable and affordable. We need more cheap energy. And the cheap energy he's talking about is hydropower. So he's really talking about Susitna, going forward with Susitna, spending a lot of state money on additional projects where the state bears the costs,
Right.
to reduce the delivered cost of energy to consumers. And that's his number. That's his top priority. Let's see. The second, Bishop talked about appropriate education funding and workforce development. He would like to expand and grow the career and technical education in the state while giving school districts and teachers what they need to properly educate young Alaskans, sufficient funding, equipment, and supplies. Spending. So the first priority is spending, state spending, focused on energy. Second priority is state spending, focused on appropriate education funding. The third target for the candidate would be the Arctic. We are the Arctic nation, he said, acknowledging that he is only beginning to explore potential policy regarding the Arctic. While mentioning the Arctic and Arctic icebreakers, Bishop brought up the Alaska Marine Highway System, which is not in the Arctic. But nonetheless, the third topic is the Arctic. What's okay? We're an Arctic nation, we are, but what does that mean in terms of policy? Well, I'm going to think about that. Is basically
Right.
is basically, but it's an important plank. It's one of the 4 important planks.
And he said, supporting that, he said that would be costly, he acknowledged, but you've got to realize the amount of money that you lost without a stable highway system. I mean, we're going to spend money to make money.
Yep, exactly. And the fourth, and we're going to spend it in the Arctic because that's big. That's that's one of my 4 planks. And the fourth plank is improving fisheries throughout the state. Okay, I got to admit, improving fisheries is important. We've got a problem in the fishing economy, and we've got a problem in from a number of respects in the fishing economy, and that's an important thing to do in the state. And it probably does deserve to be in the 4 planks. But fiscal policy certainly deserves to be one of those planks. Certainly, I'm looking, other people are looking for candidates on what their solutions are to the fiscal situation the state's gotten into. And Click doesn't think it's important enough even to be elevated to one of his 4 planks. So it's there's no there. I mean, you got a candidate who's running, who's got endorsements, who's got a background, who's got a campaign staff, who's out there running, but there's no there when you look at his platform, and when you look at what he thinks are the important issues facing the state. They're not addressing the critical issues that are facing the state. So, this may become our series of disqualifying candidates. We may go one by one through and say there's no reason to follow this candidate anymore.
No, it's the same thing that we were just talking about. This is a guy who's been on Senate Finance forever. I mean, again, cause and effect. Not realizing cause and effect. I mean, he has no fiscal plan, never had a fiscal plan when he was on Senate Finance either. So, I mean, this is the same kind of thing we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, how do I spend money? I spend money through state subsidizing energy, through the state creating new energy via hydro projects and other projects. I spend state money to do that. I spend state money on education because that's my second most important plank. The Arctic's important. Don't know why it's important. Don't know, but we are an Arctic nation, and so that's important. And so we probably have to spend a lot of money on that somehow. We certainly do on the Marine Highway. We have to spend more money there. And the fourth is fisheries. And again, I acknowledge fisheries is important. We need to get our arms around that. But that's not the overriding thing facing state government right now.
And he even turned the fisheries issue into a spending issue because he said, I put in genetic testing last year in the Senate Finance and the governor vetoed it. So again, it's all about spending and funding. And that's what it's all about. That's his whole campaign is about spend, spend, spend. A chicken in every pot, a moose in every oven, and there you go. No idea how to pay for any of it. Timothy drops the perfect quote into the chat room based on everything that we just said. Nothing will be fixed, and here's the reason why. Government is the great fiction through which everybody endeavors to live at the expense of everybody else. And that's a Frederick Bastiat quote. And that's the perfect example. That's what we saw in that whole article in Fairbanks. They want to live at the expense. The state has to pay for it. It's not we want it, but the state should pay for it. The state wants it. Well, we want it, but the feds should pay for it. The feds, we want it, and we'll just borrow a bunch of money to pay for it. Right? That's it's somebody else will pay for it. The future generations will pay for it. We are living in those Orwellian dystopian type of times right now because nobody's willing to take the bull by the horns and say, we've got to get a handle on this at any level, Brad.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, Michael. And it's not only that. I mean, the really bizarre thing out of this is we recognize we're living in times where there are people where we have a K-shaped economy where we've got a bracket of people who are they're not even staying at even. They're dropping over the course of the last 13 years. We've seen lower income families, low middle and lower income Alaska families drop below 100%, drop below the standard they had in 2010. We recognize that, but something stops us from recognizing why that is, from recognizing that it's the way, at least in Alaska, it's the way in which we're taking revenue. It's the way in which we're developing revenue. And it's frustrating to see people think through issues halfway and then stop and then sort of like, what bird is it that I can't remember the bird, but the bird that really just sort of doesn't develop its own nest, just keeps borrowing other birds' nests.
Yeah, I don't remember. I know what you're talking about, but I don't recall either. But yeah.
We don't have people understanding that the revenue side, the way in which we've constructed the revenue side, is a big part of the problem of what we've done to this economy. They stop halfway through and say, well, there's a problem, and it's government that needs to solve it. Okay, you're almost there. Think through how government is making this problem worse and how we could solve it. Then they stop there, and we need to spend more. And we need to spend more in terms of, Click Bishop, in terms of energy. We need to spend more in terms of education. We need to spend more in terms of the Arctic. I mean, it's just it's always you always recognize the problem, but they think the solution to the problem must be spending. We're just not spending it right, so we need to layer on additional spending to address this problem. We need revenue experts that understand the impact of various revenue options on households and on families, and understand where this revenue is and why the revenue design, the revenue program that we have is making this problem worse. It's not spending that's the problem. It's the way in which we're deriving the revenue to fund the spending.
Right.
That's the problem.
I would still argue that spending is the problem, because when you spend, this would all be solved if we just spent less than we take in. And unfortunately, we don't. So spending is the problem. But you're right. I mean, I understand what you're saying in that regard. We have to understand where the revenue comes from, and you're making the problem worse in the way that you're spending. But ultimately, the spending is the problem. We've got too much damn spending. The rent's too damn high, essentially. and we're spending too much of it, and nobody's willing. And again, this is at every level: national, local, state level. We're just spending more money than we're taking in. And I mean, the borough mayor in Fairbanks in that article lamenting the fact that they can't tax people on the first $150,000 value of their home in the exemption, that they're losing out on a ton of money by not being able to do that. I mean, what? I mean, it's nuts. This is what's going on today.
Yeah. Well, it's how we've sort of evolved, I guess. And the evolution is, I want to spend on this, you want to spend on that. Let's compromise. We'll both spend. We just won't spend quite as much as we would have if we'd just been able to spend on this alone. We don't have economists thinking through these issues. We don't have people who are thinking about the full issue. They sort of get halfway through, and they sort of like halfway building the nest, and they just stop, and they don't think through the complete issue and the implications of the way in which, in this case, the way in which they're raising the revenue.
Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy. And yeah, Grier Hopkins did basically say, because Brian just said losing out. Is that what? Yeah, basically said losing out on, that revenue that they could have gotten if they could just tax the people a little more on top of that. I mean, this is, again, they'll spend every available. It's Parkinson's principle for government. Government spending will expand to consume all available monies. And that's exactly what we've got right here. We got about 80 seconds here, Brad. Final thoughts. What are you looking at for next week? Give it to me real quick.
Oh, well, the governor's budget will be next week, or later this week, actually, either on Friday or next Monday. I don't have high hopes. I'm not holding out high hopes. He really hasn't done a lot of preparation that you would do if you were going to have, take some responsible revenue steps as part of the budget. So I'm sort of looking at a continuation of what we've done in the past, with the exception that oil prices are going down, and so oil revenues are going down. So that's going to be, it's going to be an even more, when people talk about the deficits that Dunleavy, how many years are in the red out there in the future, we may add a couple more years to his 10-year forecast that remain in the red.
Yeah, even the legislators are realizing his budget may be flat or less. So it's going to be this is going to be an interesting session. Let's just put it that way. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top three. Brad, thank you so much. As always, it's great to hear from you.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me. Well, that's a wrap for another week's edition of the weekly top three from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Thank you again for joining us. Remember that you can find past episodes on our YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, and Substack pages, and keep track of us during the week on Facebook and Twitter. This has been Brad Keithley, Managing Director of Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We look forward to you joining us again next week on the weekly top three.